Stuart, last year you performed in front of 80,000 people, you were saying to me, in a calendar year. Next week you have the biggest shows of your life. How does it feel so far getting to this stage where you're at? How's things?
Well, it makes me horny for the audiences in terms of, it's incredible. It's been a massive year, I would say. The last 12 months, I went for sort of 12 dates on tour to nearly over 100. So it's been quite a journey. And I think just being able to play the SEC, I mean, it's not quite the Hydro yet, but I think if you calculated the amount of people I've spoke to or gigged to in Glasgow over the last 12 months, we could have sold that out 4 nights. But I think, just being the SEC, that venue, home city as well, it's just something I'm looking forward to. And I think it's a big journey for where I came from and what I've had to do to get there. So it'll be great. The tour's been draining at times, and it's been, obviously, we'll speak about this, but the subject of the tour as well is quite very, very personal. Not quite raw, but it's very personal. And I think going over that so many times, you've got to be sort of mentally and physically fit to get through all these shows as well. So
for sure, I'm really looking forward to going on this. Obviously, the whole journey throughout it, because I think what so many people see is obviously like social media. They see Stuart on social media, like how successful, how much views you get, all of it, which is amazing. But I think what a lot of people don't understand is the journey to obviously getting here, which I'm really excited to go through today. But you told me next week you've sold, how many tickets you sold over the 3 days?
So over the 3 days at the SEC, we were about 9,000 tickets.
Wow.
So next week is sort of when we take in Hamilton and the other stuff next week, it'll be 10,000 tickets in the week, which is obviously great and pays for my new Windies that I'm getting. So that's always a bonus. So spending my tour money on new windows. So so C.R. Smith are taking all my money away. But in a serious note, I think it's just it just really wraps up the tour in terms of and then not only that though, it's already looking forward. I mean, we can speak a bit more about that, but already, I mean, we're booking into 2027, 28 now, and sort of next year's already planned. This year's completely planned. So we're not stopping there.
For sure. What's this I'm hearing about you and Beyonce and Rod Stewart?
So apparently, statistically, so I sold more tickets in Glasgow than Beyonce or Rod Stewart.
It's funny that, because I actually had Beyonce wanting to be on the podcast this week, and I said no, Rod Stewart Mitchell coming on.
Exactly. I don't think Beyonce gets an Uber here though.
That's true. She'll get right enough, man. But no, it's incredible stuff. And as I said, going back to where this has all come from, because obviously I'm lucky enough to know you on a bit more personal level, so I've seen that over the past 2 years, which even then to see how much you've grown is unbelievable at the rate. But I want to go back all the way to your childhood. What was that like? What was childhood for Stuart like growing up?
Well, I think we have known each other for a few years. If you don't know, we dated for 2 years. So that was great. It was the best part of my life, to be honest. But I think I think with the show itself, people are it's the guy behind the clips. So that's how I sell the show, in terms of the show really is the life story and my childhood for me. So I grew up, first of all, I was born in Uddingston in Lanarkshire, and little did I know then that my mum had really bad postnatal depression. She had really bad depressed. She was also getting electric therapy through her head, which must have been brutal for her in terms of the journey she was going through. So obviously that took its toll in terms of the sort of upbringing, and she tried to put a face on in terms of what she was going through. So in terms of sort of a new start, we moved from Uddingston through to Linlithgow, and that's really where I have my first childhood memory in terms of growing up in Linlithgow. And as I say in the tour, bearing in mind my mum was going through her issues, and she was actually in and out psychiatric hospitals as well, and missed my sister's birthday once because she was actually sort of an inpatient there. So when I moved to Linlithgow, that's what I remember, sort of my first childhood memory, going to nursery. But most importantly, as I describe in the show, I had my childhood accident where I lost the tips of my fingers. Quite a sort of serious accident the day before I started school. It was a cyber at the side of the road. I'll not do my routine for anybody that's seen it in the show. But so a friend unfortunately dropped the cyber, the drain, the manhole cover, whatever, on my hand, and really that was an accident that I guess it shaped the outcome of how things would go for myself, and unfortunately my mum sort of developed more severe depression, and a couple of years after the accident she never really forgave herself for the accident. The postnatal depression got worse and worse, and she took her own life, and obviously that was really tragic, and people are maybe sitting thinking, God, this is comedy, but I think for me it's always been turning the grief and using comedy to go over that. And my sister sort of shielded me from that, although we were in the house, mum was upstairs, and we both went upstairs, and mum had done what she'd done, and my sister sort of shielded me, and I'll always be grateful for that in terms of what she prevented me from seeing, because she's a loon ball. But I think we just went to the neighbours, and that was it. And I remember a childhood memory of mine was just opening the neighbour's curtain, and I saw them taking mum away in the sort of and the sort of body bag and stuff like that. And yeah, I just remember, do you know what I mean? Christ, I've got swimming in 20 minutes. But I think, come on, who's taking me? And I think that's me turning into sort of Stuart Mitchell comedian there. There's always a sort of Stuart Mitchell off stage, and yeah, tragic. I mean, your mum taking your own life. I was 7 years old at the time. My sister was maybe 10, 11. We were due to go a big family holiday in the January, and this happened on the 4th of December 1989, so it's quite sort of a long time ago. But I think that really shaped then my upbringing, and my dad really had to obviously work and really hard, and we had it wasn't really a nanny, it was like, I don't know, it was a nanny of Wish or Annie of Groupon or whatever. She was just a local lady that would support with the kids and support with Karen and I, my sister, and my dad would work basically Monday to Saturday. My dad was out there grafting and to make ends meet, really, and because it was such a shock for him. But I think he maybe knew the extent to my mum's depression, and I think what we didn't know at the time, but sort of Dad told me in later life, my mum had attempted this a few times before, so third time lucky, I believe. So, but I think it's again tragic upbringing, and nobody knows about that. And when I mentioned that on stage, I think so. The turning point in the show, and the show is obviously coming to a conclusion in terms of the tour shows that I'm doing. The turning point as the show is when I say that on stage, my mum took her own life. You sort of people sort of sit there thinking, no, she did. And then that's where they see the guy behind the clips, and I think that's why people are getting a lot from it. And again, we go into more detail there. But in terms of childhood, then that's where again, I think when I was like 11, 12, I mean, we were doing drinking and drugs, and when you're 11 or 12, you're in like primary 7s, you know, and you're doing bongs and mushrooms, and just getting a lot of people watching the podcast might be like, I know, man. but yeah, just it was crazy for that to be doing that at that age.
Yeah, pretty wild upbringing. I mean, your mum obviously takes her own life, 2 of your fingers chopped off, you're drinking and drugs by the age of 11 or 12. Christ, you've experienced more at that age than most people will in their entire life. How much do you think all of that shaped, like, you as an individual today? You briefly mentioned there, comedy is obviously like used to almost anything that's traumatic, you use that almost as a mask or to help cope with it. How much do you think all these traumatic experiences, if you like, shaped who you are today?
I think with that experience, and we'll get on to my dad in a minute, I think it really showed me now that life is so important in terms of, I think, losing mum and dad at a fairly sort of youngest age, 32. When I was 32 and my dad passed away, my mum was actually 36 when she passed away, and dad was 61. So I think I always say my life expectancy, I was due to die last Tuesday or something. But I think it really shaped me to remember that without getting morbid, we're all going to go.
Absolutely.
And I think we'll get into this later, but working in end of life care as well, it was people would have a terminal diagnosis, but what people forget is we've all got a terminal diagnosis.
We do.
We're all going to die. We might not know when, but it could be in an hour, it could be in a month, it could be in 10 years. And I think that's what's really made me think and believe that you've got to just go for things as much as you can and live life and be the best person that you can be. And that's how I've always tried to look at life. I've fell into a few traps on the way in terms of in the banking sector, and sort of went against my dad's moral compass in terms of joining financial services, and I quickly got out of that. But I think overall I've managed to sort of stay on track.
Yeah. It's a powerful lesson. Like when you say about the whole like remembering you must die, that's obviously you'll know from the Daily Stoic, like this is what the Stoics spoke about all these years ago, and it's everybody can say that, oh, you know, I've only got a set amount of time, like make sure you're valuing the time that you do have. Time's the most valuable asset we have. But I think it's really different to like, you only truly understand something when you first experience it. And you've had these somewhat brutal experiences at such a young age, so it's such a drilled into your head to know that and understand that. So I think that's probably where you've gained a lot of power from that, in the sense of you've witnessed all this around you, and you're like, no, life truly is short. It can be. Yeah. So you seem to have embodied that very well, which obviously we'll go through today. You've done so many different things, which I think a lot of people won't expect. Maybe if they've been to obviously your tour, they've heard a lot about your story, but there's so many things we're going to go through today, which I remember the first time when you tell me all this and the different careers you've had and where you've worked, I couldn't believe it, the amount of things you've experienced, and yeah, the mindset you'd have had to go through the things you've been through, which obviously is stemmed from all these things. Yeah. Talk to me a bit about your dad, obviously, from his side of things, having your partner take her own life, having kids to raise. How did he impact you? How was he when you were growing up?
Yeah, I think obviously he sort of had a lot of that in terms of the grief, I would say, and he was in and out some relationships, and before he met my stepmom, who he married, I think there was a lot of key learnings there for me. Like something I always remember my dad. So my dad worked for Singer Sewing Machines, so he had a Singer Sewing Machine franchise, and I always remember it was Bathgate. So we were in Bathgate. He was repairing somebody's sewing machine, and they went into the house, and he realised that this old lady's sewing machine, she'd put the needle in the wrong way. And with Singer, it was compulsory. You took the sewing machine away regardless, and you charged her the call-out fee and all this. And I always remember my dad sort of changed her needle for free and left it. And then she gave me £1 going out the door, and I thought, and then later on I thought about that, and I thought, you know, I was rewarded for my dad's kindness there, and she was rewarded because she didn't have to pay for the repair. My dad was rewarded because he'd done a good deed, and then I was rewarded. Whereas if he'd have followed that corporate policy, nobody would have won, apart for the company, do you know? And that really stuck with me in terms of, and he used to do that all the time. Like people would come into the shop and he would notice they were maybe elderly, or they looked quite poorly, or and he would just do it. He would repair things and just, you know what, don't worry about it.
Brilliant.
And I always felt that was really important. I mean, if he saw somebody with a suit, he would maybe add an extra tenner on. But no, he was a good person, and he always done, I would say my dad always done the right thing. And yeah, I think what he probably regretted is he worked. So that's something I've taken away. My dad kept saying, when I retire. Of course. So he built up quite a substantial pension pot, and then he never saw it. And I think that's stuck with me as well in terms of losing mum and the deaths, and to live life. And it's all right to put away for a pension, but what good's a pension if nobody's there to spend it, you know?
Absolutely.
So I think that's been a key lesson, and he had really sort of strong morals as well. And I think, it's been I think when somebody, I think when a parent dies, you almost take on some of their qualities.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what I've taken on. Like, I always try and do the right thing.
Yeah. I think it's obviously only when you never realise this when you're a teenager or whatever, how much we are just exactly like our parents. Like we may not, even if you don't look like them, you act like them in one way or another. And it's like your dad, obviously, we just mould into whatever they do. So you experience that element of kindness, so then you embody that yourself. And as you said, that just becomes even more powerful when they pass, because then the memory of them, you're like, right, okay, what did they teach me? Like these lessons that you're able to tell me about from these memories, that's powerful. It's good self-awareness, but it's pretty powerful that he taught you so much. Would you say it was really big impact in terms of, you spoke about the moral side of thing and everything like that? That impacted you a lot by the sounds of it?
I think very much he taught me a lot about finance as well. So he taught me, he never believed in credit cards. If you've not got the money, don't spend it. So he was very much and very simple at that, and he would sort of, you learned how to budget, and if you had sort of a fiver and you went to the shop and, I don't know, spunked £4.80, you're not getting anything else. But I think he was very good at that in terms of financially, just showing you should be putting stuff away, you should always be saving, you should always think carefully in terms of, but again, I went off in that sort of a bit of a spiral with that in later life when I went into banking. And yeah.
So throughout school, obviously, you've told me before in the sense you kind of knuckled down at some point. What was school like for you? Because you've said that you're the first person in your family to go to uni. So you done okay in school, I imagine. How's school for you?
So it was interesting school. So Inland Lithgow, nightmare. So I'd be dogging school all the time, no progressing very well. Nobody knew I was dogging school, but I very rarely went. And then I think my sister get into a bit of issues and I get into issues, and that's where my dad just decided, I think when he married my stepmom, we're having a new start. So we moved from Linlithgow to Uddingston, and it was like a complete shift. So I was quite popular at school, and so was my sister, and I went from being popular to zero at a new school, and that was tough. And sort of had the what would I say, the sort of softer spoken Scottish accent in a West of Scotland school, and get bullied a bit to start with in terms of being the new kid sort of in the school, and that was quite tough to deal with, but managed to sort of get through that. And then I started hanging around with people that started actually doing their homework and going to school, and I think that circle of friends around me was a massive influence to say, do you know what, I'll maybe try and compete with these folk in terms of, and that was really key. And little did I know then that I was really severely dyslexic, so I really struggled at English, really struggled at foreign languages, but I was amazing at creative writing. So I had a tutor who came in and supported me with my English, and she actually, Mrs. Ross, her name was, she got me to sign a story I'd written. I don't know if she's still got it, but I always remember that. She says, you're so creative, and I wrote a story about something, and she got me to sign it to say, I'll always keep this. And I always remember if she's still around or still got it. But
better check eBay.
Better check eBay, I know. So I think that it was a total transition, and then I think forced is maybe a sort of hard word, but I was very much encouraged to apply to university, to go down that university route, and that's where I went to university to study economics, first in my family to go to uni. And then again, a big shift when I started uni, Her Majesty's Treasury, who, if people don't know, it's like the Treasury is part of the government in terms of that's who has all the money. And at the time, the Chancellor was Gordon Brown, who went on to be obviously Prime Minister. And I was encouraged to apply for their sponsorship year programme. And I remember my dad, regardless, he said, I'll make it work. And he got me a studio flat in London. And I think at the time it was like £820 a month. It was absolutely ridiculous. And I was the only student outside Oxford or Cambridge to get in to this programme. And it was amazing in terms of just living in London for a year and seeing the insides of governments, and obviously working with the hierarchy as well. But also it showed me that some people abuse their power in terms of, you would be drinking champagne at lunchtime at government events, and who's paying for this champagne? It's the taxpayer, do you know? Which was completely wrong, and the flights and accommodation. And I think that's when that started changing my insight into how the world worked. And I was actually the youngest ever person to work at the Treasury at that stage, because English students did that a year later.
What age were you?
So I was 19 at the time. So I was the youngest ever individual to work at the Treasury. And then they offered me a role. So there was a role there, and there was I could have quit and went, and I decided I was just going to finish university, and then I would go back and see the outcome. And I transferred to the Scottish Government as part of the placement as well, and get an insight from there. So So I had this whole sort of, it wasn't even 20 yet, I was still a teenager, and I had the experience of working beside the future Prime Minister and then Scottish Government. So I was all set to go off. And then I started, decided to start a business at university. I started a company called Fives. It was a five-a-side football business with a Z instead of an S. And we ran five-a-side football games on council facilities to help those in deprived areas sort of get football matches and come together, and the police were involved, and it was more a social enterprise, but it was a business. And then I sort of sold that on very early to my cousin at the time who I worked with.
What age were you here?
I would have been about 22.
Wow, really
So
young.
I was really young.
That.
And for what I got, it was decent. I put my first deposit down on my first flat. And and then I left university and I went into the world of corporate banking.
Wow.
And it was I mean, at the time I was on a massive salary. I was 23, 24. I was on this big salary, never even get interviewed for the job. It was like, guy, you interested? You did the five-a-side thing. And you come, shook the guy's hand, there's the salary, there's the mortgage, you can have a preferential rate, and because you're working for the bank, and I was flying. And you know, that way, I had everything there. I had the sports car, I had the flat, I had the sort of, me and my girlfriend at the time, we were going to South Africa and safari, and we were doing everything. But what I was doing is I was getting into huge debt.
Okay.
I was overspending, even though I had a lot of money. I wanted more, and all these material things. And I always feel that I had everything, but I was dying on the inside. I had a massive hole on the inside, and I had all this stuff, and I was the most unhappy I'd ever been, and I was broke. So I had to go into a debt arrangement scheme. I had debt collectors at my door.
At what age? What age are we here?
25.
Wow.
So I was 25. So I was absolutely broke. I just managed to sort of, it's so ironic because during COVID you could take that 6 months. So I had to take it on my mortgage while I was at the bank. They never knew about it because they came for confidentiality. But then I think a turning point for me at the bank was they had redundancies. So then the financial crash came.
2008?
So 2008, the financial crash, it wasn't me, by the way. 2008 came. I remember sitting in the Clydesdale Bank and the crash hit. And then it turned out that the bank, through American banks, had some subprime mortgages.
Oh, okay.
And that's where the conversation started that redundancies are coming. And very nervous, of course. And I remember getting into a room with someone beside me, a colleague who was pregnant. And they split the room up. And I kept my job and she lost hers.
Oh, that's brutal.
And that for me was, I don't know what it was, but see that whole, as I say, that whole moral compass that went off course. That's when I said, this isn't right. And I walked into the office and I said, I'm away. And I remember them saying, what do you mean you've survived the restructure? And I went, I'm going, I'm off. And I sat and I wrote my resignation letter. And you know, everybody at the time was like, what you doing? What you doing? You're earning this. And even my dad was a bit like, what you doing? But he didn't realise what the practices you were up to in banking. And that's where I walked out the bank that day, thinking I don't have anything to go to. I'm broke, I'm skint.
Yeah.
And then I think maybe 5 days later, I randomly saw an advert in a newspaper for a job at an end-of-life charity, and it was for Sue Ryder.
Yes.
And we'll speak about that in terms of I only left there in February last year, so I did that for 15 years, and that was a turning point for me. I thought, do you know what? I'm doing something that I want to give back, and I started, launched and ran a prison volunteer programme for the charity where individuals would come from prison, volunteer in the charity shops, and then hopefully get paid work on release. And a lot of these guys had been where I'd been when I was a teenager. They'd maybe lost somebody that had a tough upbringing, and I felt that was a great fit for me. And you know, I was earning buttons compared to what I was earning at the bank.
Banking.
But as that old cliche, I felt richer in myself.
I'm not surprised.
And I think that for me was the opener. And in the bank, they tried to get me to go to a marketing course. And I went to the first night of the marketing course before I quit. And I noticed there was a stand-up comedy writing course on in the next room. And that was it. So I registered for the course. And basically the week I started Sue Ryder, I started the comedy course. And that, having a job that I loved, by the way, and I know people will they'll be stuck in jobs in comedy they hate. And a lot of people were maybe, what would I say? Oh, Stuart Mitchell, he's taking gigs away for us and he's still working full time.
Yeah.
Which you can see their point of view, but I loved my job.
Yeah.
I loved what I'd done. I loved the rewards there. I'd done very well. I progressed extremely quickly and get numerous promotions over the years. But then it was time to go. And I had that whole 15-year period where we won multiple awards in terms of the programme. I went on to then look after community service placements. So we would maybe have 400 placements out a day. So I would coordinate that, risk assess all the individuals. And then I went on to be the sort of head of retail volunteering off the back of that. So by the time I left the charity, it was in a good position in terms of how we've evolved. We'd really established that programme, community payback scheme as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed that role, and it was a very tough decision to leave.
Absolute roller coaster, that, isn't it? I mean, you go from in your early 20s working with Gordon Brown and all this. You're working for the government, going into banking, and it is the lesson you kind of brought up at the time. I think is such an important one. It's that this is all the things that people imagine and push people for. I remember when I was leaving school, and I remember speaking to always adults, and they'd be like, "Oh, what are you studying at uni?" I couldn't get into uni, right? So they were always like, "What are you studying?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm not going to uni, whatever." But it's always like, if somebody said banking, "Oh, amazing, that's what you're pushed towards, all this." So you essentially achieved in your early 20s what most people would think is the perfect life. Got all the money, got the cars, yet obviously ending up in debt. I can imagine the effects that must have had on you mentally at such a young age when you've not probably fully matured and understood the world yet. It's some hard-hitting realities. So you made a really good point in the sense that you're going in to help all these guys. You had good experience. I mean, what happened to your mum? What happened to you throughout school? What happened to you there? So you can see how all this really shaped you. You'd mentioned going into comedy. Obviously, you've seen literally an advert, which is mad to think where it started. Was there any, if you're going back a little bit further, was there any signs throughout school or even when you were in banking, were you naturally funny? Like, was there any signs of comedy?
So I used to stay off sick deliberately in secondary school because in English, you had to do a stand-up talk. So in English, you had to stand in front of the class and do a talk about something. And I actually called in sick so much, the teacher at the time told me to come in my lunch break and do it in front of him. And I absolutely hated standing up in front of audiences. And then when I went to uni, to be fair, I think you had to do that more, and I hated it. And then it was for my dad had a surprise. It was meant to be a surprise 50th, but it was they made it his 49th or something. And I did a speech for my dad's birthday at the Castle Rooms in Uddingston, and people started laughing when I was doing the speech. And I don't know what it was. I got this feeling, I got this rush. And I thought, do you know what, that felt really good. But I never explored it at the time.
What age were you there?
I would have been probably early 20s. And then I was always a joker. Like my mates for high school I'd turn up and I'd turn up to parties and I would be hitting out jokes and wee quibs. And when you're in Magaluf, I'd be throwing stuff in cars and dicks and all that stuff. Like just being a wee dick. But it wasn't till I would say I'd done that speech, and then when I saw the course, so I saw that stand-up comedy course, and I decided I was going to do that. And it's so funny because I remember like my first ever gigs, I went for driving a BMW Z4 to a Peugeot 107 like this wee, but I was absolutely over the moon. Do you know what I mean? My girlfriend at the time was but I think, where God's sake, man, what's happening with this? I'm like, it's convertible as well, it's just got no roof. And and it was that's what I loved in terms of, and even now, like I've gone off tangent a bit, but even now in motors, like I've got a decent motor, but I couldn't give a shit. It's like it's only for safety and it's for sort of economy and range for the miles that I do every year. But I couldn't give a shit now, and it's so funny because when I was in banking, I wanted everything, like everything, and I think people would say now I've got everything, whatever that means, but I feel as if I need nothing.
Yeah, which is,
if you took that all away from me now, I would just go and do it again. It wouldn't bother me at all, as long as I've got my health and my family and my wife and my daughter, and we'll touch on that in terms of why I think that's really important. I'm happy. Do you know what I mean? And I think with comedy, but comedy's tough. Like, comedy is tough. I'm very fortunate that when my mum passed away, I had an eating disorder when I was in my teens, and a really bad eating disorder, and to the point I had to get sort of psychiatric help, and sort of dealt with it there, and had the confidence to actually go and seek support with that. And I had a lot of post-traumatic stress, and because of that day with mum, although I was shielded, I still remember seeing what I saw in terms of so I dealt with all of that, and I felt, but if you're not mentally strong, I think comedy can ruin people.
yes.
Because there's a huge amount of rejection, and we'll touch on that later. But I think, getting into comedy for me was hugely stressful and tough at the start, and we can touch on that journey, because people that sit in the SEC and watch me will never ever understand what I've gone through in order to get where I am just now.
Yeah. So, year 2009, that's when you leave banking. Roughly around then, is that the right time frame?
Yeah,
and then you go into Sue Rider.
So I took on Sue Rider only 3 days a week. I moved up and down for like certain days, but so I started with Sue Rider, and I drove everywhere. So I gigged everywhere. I drove everywhere in the car. All the money I was earning for Sue Rider, I was pumping in to gigs. And I would drive to Birmingham for 10 minutes, no money. I would drive all over Scotland for no money. I would drive all the headliners around to get on the bill for 10 minutes. People like Stu, who was a very famous sort of Scottish comedian, I would drive him about, and again, you're just driving all these just to get stage time. And I would be writing, I would be recording all my sets. So I would record everything, I would go through it the next day, I would tweak it. And that's where comedy to me is very much related to life in terms of failure and rejection.
Yeah.
So you get on stage as a comedian and you do a joke that you've written that day sometimes, and it bombs, it gets nothing. You need to make sure your head can process that, and you keep going.
Yep.
Now what you do then is you get up in the morning and you listen to the recorder and you tweak it.
Yes.
And then the next day you go up and you do it, and it might get a wee chuckle. So right, I need to switch that around. And then to life, that's me in terms of, I believe you should be constantly improving. Yeah. You should be constant. It's like, if anybody knows about Facebook ads or whatever, you're constantly tweaking them and shifting them and tweaking them. That's exactly what you're doing when you're writing a comedy set. You're tweaking everything. You're building it up, slowly building it up. And I think we've spoke about this before. Where I got that mindset from was, again, my wife is a massive wrestling fan, and she loves Bret the Hitman Hart. And for her birthday, I took her to see Bret the Hitman Hart do a Q&A session. And he spoke about, somebody asked him a question about, why do you think you are the best there ever was, the best there ever? And he says, well, see, when I went out on tour, he said, WrestleMania. So WrestleMania was like his SEC for me. And what he would do is, he would, on the road at the smaller gigs, he would be testing new moves. He would be testing new routines. But he said Ric Flair every night would do the same thing, slapping folk. That's all he did. So come to WrestleMania, Ric Flair would be slapping folk. Now, people would love him on the tour, And he said that he would have good gigs in the tour, but maybe average. But see, the time WrestleMania came, he would absolutely blow it at the park because he'd tested, tweaked, and blown it. Whereas Ric Flair was doing the same thing at every gig and even WrestleMania.
There you go.
And that's what made me think, do you know what? And and see, and we'll talk about this in the future. And I'm with the new tour coming, so I'm writing the new tour. So last night in Bathgate, I had to go for having, I would say, an amazing gig to an alright one because I'm testing stuff.
Yes.
For the new tour. Now you get better at it, but for me then to have a better tour next year or the following year, God, the thought of going on tour again next year. But no, seriously, I think it's all about testing and tweaking and have the confidence to do that. And failure is so important in comedy. To me, I think I've said to you before, and maybe I've probably taken this out of a book or whatever, but failure to me is the first step to success. And I think in the book I read as well that you can never fail if you don't give up.
Exactly.
If you don't give up, you're never failing.
That's it.
But if you stop, you've failed.
Yeah.
But if you don't stop, you're never failing because you're just constantly chipping at it. And there's been times where I've nearly thrown in the towel with comedy.
I bet.
And I think, but nobody gets all the. So one story with me is, so I once got the megabus to London for what's called a gong show at the Comedy Store. And I get the bus down the megabus, 9 hours?
Yep, it's a long day.
Went on stage, I get gonged off after 25 seconds and I turned round and got the overnight bus back.
Wow.
I did that about 15 times.
Unreal.
And then I lasted maybe a minute. I'd come back. I lasted 2 minutes. I came back and eventually I won it. And I'm probably one of the only few Scottish acts now that play the Comedy Store in London. But people just think you play the Comedy Store in London. They don't know the 15 megabuses you got.
That's it. They don't know you mentioned that obviously this is what comedy's taught you about life, and this is what I think it separates so many people in terms of we look at success in any endeavour in life. So when people see failure as a bad thing, what do? They scare away from it. Oh, I can't do that. What if I fail? Great, you're not going to get better. Whereas exactly what you just said, you have to experience some fault. That's where you learn.
Yeah.
Like everybody knows that. You learn more from your failures. Success teaches you nothing. Look at you in banking. Like at the time, you learned nothing until you failed, until you went down. That's when you got all the learnings and you became better off the back of it. There's a quote that I love and it says, until death, all defeat is psychological. Like it's not reality. It's not reality. Until you're dead, no defeat is permanent. It's
funny because I've got a mate for high school that I still keep in touch with now, and he's your total workie, like labourer and stuff. And he was like, "Aye, folk were saying to me at work, he's been lucky," and I'm telling them, are you joking me, man? He used to get the bus done, and it's so interesting, like that journey you take, and even just I think two things that, what would I say? There's probably 3 things in comedy that really stuck with me when it was tough, and I remember going to a club called the Bearcat, which is like all the big stars pop in there to do sets and run stuff. It's in Twickenham outside London. And I remember I was staying in Scotland at the time, and I'll explain when I moved to London. But I stayed in Scotland. I drove there. I drove to Twickenham outside London. And I done my open spot and it went really well and I was really delighted. And I'm walking out and the guy, Graham, who owns the venue, he tapped me in the shoulder and he gave me 20 quid. No, 20 quid, it cost me over 100 in petrol or whatever. But I thought that I've just been paid for a gig. This is my first ever paid gig. I never get any in Scotland. And he gave me a £20 note and it was like, and I'll never forget that because there was he didn't have to do that. And I think that was really a turning point for me. And then I would say I got into the clubs very early. So within 2 years, I was playing jonglers clubs. I was playing Highlight. I was playing the Glees. So I progressed very quickly.
What year are we talking about? Are we right now?
We're probably, I would say 2011, 2012. So I'm gigging, I'm doing my 20 sets, etc., etc. And then what happened then was, I would say, I really invested in my own career. I took the decision where I saved up a bit of money and I went to Los Angeles for 2 weeks, and I paid to sit with late night comedy writers and coaches.
Wow, that's a great.
And I sort of I got a lot from that. I mean, it was expensive. It was LA, and then there was a conference in Vegas, and that really showed me the structure of jokes and writing and framing jokes, and that was a big investment. Now, you tell your average comedian what I paid to do that, they would say, "Are you off your nut?" Just like they would say, as we'll go on, what changed me was social media and investing in camera equipment. I think that was a really key turning point for me. And then I did a showcase at the Edinburgh Fringe, and I was invited on the Best of the Fest, which is a showcase in Australia. And I went to Sue Ryder, and my boss at the time said, "Go. Unpaid leave, go." And I'll never forget that. They gave me 3 months off. Now, try and doing that at the bank. And I went for 3 months in Australia, 3 months before I was getting married, by the way. And that. So my wife was very supportive as well, which is very important. You need a supportive partner. So that's what I done. I went to Australia, and then I was invited back to Australia for a bigger showcase. And then that's when I got the call. I was cast in the Australia tour, and I was also cast in BBC Shetland. So I got a part in BBC Shetland, and I was on my way to, Dad was unwell at the time. Noah's unwell. My dad got diagnosed with terminal cancer, and spoke to him, and he's like, "Look, fine." And I was literally packing to go to Edinburgh Airport to fly to Shetland to do this very first my acting role in Shetland. And I got a call from my stepmom to say my dad had deteriorated very rapidly, and this was it. So they had, nightmare for them. They must have to a recast within a 48-hour window. I had to pull 3 months to Australia. I say I had to pull. I done it like that. The decision was made before it even had to be. And I was there for my dad for 6 months, and I took 6 months out really, just to care for him and just sort of deal with all of that. And that was the sort of break I had for comedy really for 6 months. That was 2015.
2015. And I mean, it just shows that's literally over 10 years ago now. And people think, as you said, that the guy that's speaking to one of your friends, "Oh, he got lucky." This is 10 years ago, and you got to the stage where things are starting to take off, and then this happens. And then this is where most people would quit, which again, when we talk about the whole defeat and setbacks, and as we'll go on to show, undoubtedly, this will have taught you more about yourself and about comedy. But what do you think gave you this resilience? Do you think this, I mean, again, we go back to your childhood, we look at all these things, you were able to see your dad passing away and get back into comedy and do all this. Where did that come from, this resilience?
I think for me, it shouldn't have done at the time, but I was signed with Mickey Flanagan's agent. So I was with a big agent, and after Dad got diagnosed, and I was dropped. And that had a big effect on me, because I was like, "Oh, Dad's dying." I was with this big agency, big things happening, and then I was dropped, and I was like, what's the point? And I was in a pretty dark place then. But do you know what? It was almost like, I'm going to show them.
Brilliant. So you chose to take the positive side.
I'm going to show them. But see, now I wouldn't be interested. I'm not doing anything for other people. I'm doing it for me. You shouldn't, for my view, you shouldn't do anything to say, "I'm going to show him." Yeah. You shouldn't react like that. You should just do it for yourself. But at the time, I was like, "No, I'll show him. And yeah, I think for then I got back on the wagon, and I did my Edinburgh Fringe debut in 2016. So the dad died in June 2015, and there was things that happened within that. I'm on a panel show called Breaking the News now that I've done for 10 years, and I get my debut appearance was it was all booked in, so I had my debut appearance for that performance, and my dad died 10 days before the recording.
Wow.
and you obviously had the service, and then like 4 days after I had to go and sit in a panel show. I fucking smashed it.
Aye, that's unreal.
And I had the best, I was with Phil Jupidus as my sidekick, who's a very, like, never mind the Buzzcocks, and he said nobody knew about Dad apart from the producers, and he said for your first panel show, that was great. And I think for then I just worked as much as I could. And then the turning point again, the turning point again was COVID, and been the effect that had on me, and again thinking of throwing in the towel with that.
Where were you at? So let's say we get to COVID, obviously 2020 time, comedy's been going back well, you've been building it back up again. Where are you in this situation when COVID hits? What's life looking like at this time?
Well, I think before, so my wife used to be in the Singing Kettle, so we were both in the arts. She'd left the Singing Kettle, she started Funbox, they were on their first tour. I was due to do a sort of mini tour as well. I famously went on stage at my first Glasgow Comedy Festival show before lockdown and said, oh, this is the first night of my tour and it might be the last. And little did I know then that ironically my tour was called Is It Just Me? And for 18 months after that, it was just me on my own. So because of the way Sue Ryder worked, with me working those part-time hours, when they furloughed me, I was on buttons, because you only get 80% of your salary. And then I never had any comedy income anymore. And because of that 50-50 rule with the government, I was one of these 3 million excluded.
Yeah.
And we'd just bought a house. So we'd just bought a house 6 months before. My wife, obviously the tour finished, literally had nothing. We had nothing, and I just did. My wife was pregnant. My daughter was due to arrive in the 2021, and I remember just being like, what am I going to do? And what I had to do is I did track and trace. So I did track and trace. My wife was teaching English to Chinese kids online.
Wow.
So we were both on our laptops just trying to make as much money as we could, because we never get any government support at all. And it was brutal. And obviously our mom and dad did, so you can't ask for money, do you know? So that was a really, really tough time. Yeah, absolutely nuts.
I think it highlights as well, which you've already shown multiple times throughout in your life. These are horrible things, right? Nobody would wish that on anybody. But the reality is, this is life. This shit can happen. And what you've chose is obviously how you're going to respond to that. These terrible times, and you've spoke to me, you've told me this so many times, in the sense of when we've spoke about the things that you've experienced, it truly does come down to that. How are you going to respond to this? Because you can cower away, you can be like, oh, why me? Why is this happening to me? And play the victim's mentality. But the reality is, you've got a baby on the way. Yeah. You have to make it work, and it seems like you've both done that. Yeah,
we did, and I think we literally just hammered away. We hammered away, and then I think the biggest, I was really going to sort of throw in the towel, absolutely. So after during COVID, my daughter. So unfortunately, we had issues. My daughter was breached, so my daughter was sort of round the wrong way in terms of with Hannah, and we were booked in for a cesarean for that to happen, and an emergency came in, and we went all the way back to bigger and more trauma. My wife went into labour in the house, and I had to absolutely bomb it for bigger to Edinburgh Royal Infirmary in rush hour traffic. I was like there was like roadworks, and I was literally cutting through the roadworks and going through red lights and everything to get to the hospital, and it was absolutely awful. They brought Morgan out, and she was blue, and the button gets hit. All the sirens go off. You hear them running up and down, and they brought her through and says, "Do you want a picture with her?" And I knew. I was like, "This is awful. This is awful." So we were taking pictures of her, and my wife was so sort of in gas and air, she didn't really know, and I thought, this is going to be brutal. And then the consultant came in, And she says the next 24 hours are going to be, and I'm thinking, God, and she's saying, and it's looking as if because she was starved of so much oxygen, and you're thinking, what is happening?
Right.
What a jinx. And do you know, I'm no religious or anything like that, but I get down on my knees that night, whether it was to mum and dad or whatever, and I just said, don't let this happen. And thankfully, like everything they just said, babies are fighters, and she was in intensive care for about 8 days, and they gave us a room, so we stayed at the infirmary and we were sort of in a room, and then we sort of sat there, and it was COVID as well, so you had your masks, and then eventually she started breathing on her own, and we were like, she's doing so well. And now, thank God, she's 4, Morgan's 4 now, and she's amazing. Like, there's no complications. She's got slight issue with her eye that's getting sorted, but just to think at the very best case scenario, she's going to be brain damaged and she's going to need sort of 24-hour care or whatever. But it was absolutely brutal. But again, something inside me just got us through it, you know. And I think now that's really showed me again that why life's so important, and you just need to go for what you want. And then I think after that incident, I was like, I'm done. I need to support my wife, my kid. We're not earning any money through comedy. With COVID, you get the odd Zoom gig and stuff. And then I would say, just as we come out of COVID and things started up again, literally out the blue, Radio 4 came in and said, we want to record a show. Because I put in the brief about everything that had happened, and they loved it. They loved the tragedy, they loved the messaging, and that's really what turned. I would say I did the Radio 4 series. It done really well, and off the back of the Radio 4 series, I bought my camera equipment. And ever since I bought my camera equipment, it's the best thing I've ever done.
So I remember when we met, which wouldn't have been too long after that, I think, or maybe around the same time, and you were obviously doing, again, this first time I'd ever got a behind the scenes look at a comedian, right? And I remember you telling me about all the work you put in. I was blown away by it. The preparation you do for each of your shows. People just, like me, we think comedians are just funny people. They're just, they're really funny, they're gifted, and they go up on stage and they do their thing. But seeing the preparation that goes behind all this is incredible. And obviously you took that next step when you got the camera equipment. You started going out to all your shows, filming them all. Talk us through that in terms of how that really changed the game for you, and what time are we at here? What year would this have been?
So this would probably have been, I would say, 2023. I would say 2023. That's when I started at Blackfriars in Glasgow. And again, these people that have been around you in terms of, I know the guy that sort of runs this studio, he came in and filmed me as well, and other people filmed. And I think just trying to put everything on camera and investing in people as well as equipment. And that's what I did. I started with a Sony camera on my own, wasn't the best. I put a sketch out about, it was a sort of mixed marriage, Catholic Protestant thing, and it done really well. And off the back of that, shows sold. So I thought, right, I'll record more. And it was difficult because a lot of, here's Mitchell with his camera again. When I would turn up to get, oh, for fuck's sake, man, you're not setting that up. And ironically, these are the folk that are now filming their own stuff. Used to take it to London. I actually had an act that stood in front of it in London at a gig. He deliberately stood in front of the camera. And, at the time I was gutted because it was a good gig, but I mean, ironically in comedy, you're the one that's laughing now, do you know, in terms of it. Just, you need to sort of distance yourself for people like that, really, and just focus on how you react to that. But yeah, I just started filming my stuff, editing it myself, putting it out, filming stuff, editing it myself. And I edited all my own stuff, subtitled all my own stuff, and just really learned what I needed to do. And yeah, since then, I've just always invested. Do you know how we spoke about with comedy, tweaking and making it better, tweaking? Mm-hmm. That's what I do with all the process. How do we get that camera angle better? How do we get better audience cameras? How do we get the lighting? And then we've gone now for me starting in that room to tonight.
Yes.
So tonight, it's a Friday tonight. This is the first weekend in my comedy club. And if you'd have told me I'm going to have Stuart Mitchell's comedy club, it would never have happened. I always believed, out of everything, I always believed I would get there, whatever that means, getting there. But yeah, it's been such a mad journey, and now again it's all about investing in people and equipment, and now I've got a whole team around me. Mm-hmm. So I've got a head of production, I've got a cameraman, I've got a director of operations, which people will be sitting there thinking, a comedian, you've got a director of operations, and that sounds nuts, and it sounds like a fancy title, but I've literally got someone now who he's almost like a consultant, and he does all my managing of my head of production and the staff and the PR shoots and the everything at all. And I think the guy's called Sam, and it's Punchline Promotions, and I met him, I would say, I met him maybe a year ago, and he was late for the meeting, and I can't stand folk that late. So I nearly just canned it. And then he turned up and said, sorry, my train was late. And you're like, aye, right. Mm-hmm. And he was English as well. What's happening? But I would say with the combination of my filming, writing, and him coming in with a different eye, ironically, I've progressed more in the last year leaving Sue Ryder than I did in the last 15 years when I first started comedy. Yeah. And that for me has been the biggest jump. But for me, it doesn't matter if you're in comedy, you've got to invest. You've got to invest. And as I say, if you say to other comedians, I paid $2,000 for a camera, they'd say, you're off your nut.
Aye. And these are the same people that, as you said, are now starting to do it years later and have missed the curve.
Yeah, and I think I think the key for me has always been in comedy, 15 years, cameras, whatever, is consistency. Mm-hmm. It's absolute consistency in terms of, I'll never go to a new material night and day on new material. Mm-hmm. I don't believe in that. I'll slip in, if I come out with 5 jokes, I'll be pleased. Mm-hmm. If I do a joke, a new joke every gig, if I'm gigging 200 gigs, I'll get 200 new jokes at the end of the year. And you've got your Bret Hart, at the end. And it's consistency with me. I started with 4 clips a week. I went up to 7 clips a week, and now I do 2 a day. Yeah. I get 10 million views a month.
Yeah.
From my clips.
To think of, isn't it? And how many did you get when you started? What, a few hundred, few thousand?
Aye.
Yeah.
And I don't even look now, so I don't even look at how many shares they get, or I just let somebody else do that. My main focus now is, and you'll know, it's consistently writing and learning material for the new tour. And we've talked about that, the mind, body and business. And for me, still got a wee bit to do in each. But what I would say is, if I was sitting across from myself, what I'm doing is I'm always progressing. Yes. When I'm maybe not going at the speed I should be, but at least I'm not going backwards, and
correct.
I'm going as forwards as I can do. Constant, and I'm a comedian at the end of the day, you know what I mean? A lazy bastard. But no, it's been a journey. But yeah, it's not, I mean, there's already plans to sort of scoping out other venues as well, in terms of not leaving Blackfriars, in terms of additional to Blackfriars. And looking at that at the moment, looking at Australia are interested. Can we hit that in 10 days in terms of go over there, do some gigs? And then, taking the shows on the road. So we're on the road on Thursdays. Mm-hmm. New tours happening 2027 across 28. The goal's a hydro, so the hydro is being booked. So that's always interesting. I've got a photo on my phone from a gig in London that no one turned up.
Nobody? Not one person?
Not one person. So I did a preview of this tour show in London.
When was this?
Nobody turned up 2 years ago. And I've got a photo of me with nobody in the background.
And
because I said I'd keep that. And I've also got a photo I took outside the Hydro because I thought I'll be in there. I'm going to go in there.
And next week you play in front of 3,000 people.
Yes. So I've got 2 nights. I've got 2 nights on the Saturday night and then one on the Sunday. So 3 nights at the SEC Armadillo. And then that's the tour concluded. And I think the tour's almost been a bit of therapy for me as well in terms of telling that whole life journey. And that's it concluding. And although it's not been announced yet, but I've also recorded my own special as well. So the BBC have done that. So so it's all great. It's great. It's been catalogued.
It sure is. There's an interesting point you mentioned there. I had something I wanted to share with you today because you talk about how it was almost like therapy for you, and I think it's very well known that comedians, a lot of people talk about, a lot of comedians have had trauma in their past. I mean, quite clearly you've been through them all. You've had a lot of these things in your past, so you can see how people use this as a coping mechanism. And there was something I found here. Have you ever heard of the sad clown paradox?
I've heard of it. I can't really remember what the...
It's a great point. It says here, the sad clown paradox is when individuals create humour in a professional setting despite inner turmoil. The use of humour acts as a form of self-medication and provides short periods of satisfaction, detaching the individual from any difficulties or traumas, essentially acting as a coping mechanism. And then it goes on to say, there is an ever-present anxiety amongst comedians that their popularity may disappear tomorrow, and hence they may be driven to exhaustion in their work. Can you relate to that at all?
Aye, absolutely. I think it goes back to so my childhood, obviously with mum passing away, dad was so busy, I never get much attention. And I think what comedy gives me is I'm standing there on a mic and all the attention's on me. And I think that's where it comes from, and I think that's why I get a lot for comedy. But you can't really explain the rush of adrenaline from laughter. Somebody once asked me though, with comedy, have you forgot to laugh yourself? Do you know how to laugh? And I would say it's very hard. My wife makes me laugh. She makes me laugh. How much she spent in Asda. No, I think she makes me laugh, but it does take a lot to make me laugh now, in terms of like, I'll just sit there at a movie and be like, it's quite good. I see what they've done now.
I see, because you see all behind it.
Because you sort of know what's coming, and you know the writing process, and you know they've set that up to come back to it later, and so you're sort of detached a bit from it. But I think, I think at the moment I'm happy. And I mean that, I'm happy at the moment. I think I'm happy. I know where I want to go. What I'm not going to do though is I'm not going to say I'll do this when I retire. I'm doing everything now.
Correct.
So I'm enjoying. I'm very fortunate that we can go on holidays, and we went to Disney with Morgan, and it's always the case. So nothing simple. She get the flu for 5 days, but it's always the same. Nothing runs smoothly. I just accept that in life. But yeah, I'm very lucky, and we've got other things, and I think it's very important for me to enjoy that now rather than saying I'll do that in the future. And I want Morgan to see the world, so that if she does decide to go to college or uni, she's maybe no retained to Scotland. She can maybe look at other countries, or if she doesn't want to go down that route, then we can support her. But she's no getting given everything as well. Like, I'm no a believer in that, in terms of she's still got to do her work and part-time jobs and stuff. But at the moment I'm in a comfortable place, and I'm happy. And I think I think now I'm very self-aware that if I wasn't happy in comedy, or no longer happy doing comedy, I would step back. And I think I'm very aware of my own mental health, and as well, in terms of if I ever went down that route, I would definitely step back. But I'm not in that place now. I'm really enjoying it at the moment. Well, wait and tell me. If I die in Mars at the SEC,
then we'll see about that. I think some of the things that you've told me in private before have been really interesting. Apart, obviously, I've mentioned multiple times, I was always amazed at how much you have to plan and prepare, and all the things that go into being a comedian. But what would you say are some of the downsides that you think some people don't think about when it comes to comedy? I mean, I know you've mentioned when you have to take time off at the stage you're at now, the impact that has. Yeah. What are some of the downsides?
Well, I think as a comedian, you've got to miss a lot of social events, you've got to miss weddings, you've got to miss birthdays. It's fucking brilliant. I love it. No, but you do miss a lot of that. Now, that was in the past. Now, I've changed my whole look, and if we want to speak about that, I'm more than happy. But I think, yeah, you do miss out on family occasions, unfortunately, but that's changing. So for instance, I mentioned going to Australia. I'd be in and out in 10 days. I'm not going to Australia for 3 months and leaving my family behind. We can't obviously take, because Morgan will start school, so we can't take her. But unless I'm in and out, it's not happening. And I'm turning down things now and saying no. But people are amazed, and comedians are amazed, specifically I was talking, who will remain nameless. Mm-hmm. They couldn't understand that I turned down a very lucrative gig to take Mother's Day off. And now I've decided that a weekend, a month, I'm bringing in a guest MC so that I can have a weekend a month. Now, that weekend a month costs a huge amount of cash, but the returns I get in that are unmeasurable. That's it. In terms of family, creating memories, and doing the right thing and being party. I'm involved in charities as well, and that to me is the most important thing.
And I think that's shown by your experiences. Think all these experiences you've had, and you've been shown that life is very short. A lot of these comedians, probably the one you're speaking about, who doesn't quite, he's like, can't get their head around it. Right. They don't have that same belief in, like, you truly do believe that life can be very short. So that's why I remember when you started speaking to me about that, in the sense of you wanted to take more time off, especially with the age that Morgan's at right now, for you to spend as a family, because you know how valuable that is. It's just these people haven't had that experience that you've had. So I think it sounds like that's been a big thing for you in terms of being able to take this time off. Absolutely. And I think for me, it's design, and I hope this doesn't come across bad, but I'm designing my own gigs around the audience. So for instance, I've got like a niece's birthday party's coming up. So what I do is I make sure that I don't put an afternoon show on that day. Now, doing that, people would say, oh, but you're losing X. But I'm not, because I don't need to be there. I don't want to be there. I want to be at the family occasion. And Mother's Day is the same, and Morgan's birthday is the same. And taking them out is obviously financially impactful, but there's only so much you need. Exactly. What would you say because I think this is what really drives people to continue to chase money. What would you say your success, what's your definition of success to Stuart Mitchell? What does success look like for you? Well, you should never confuse success with happiness. I don't measure things in success. I measure in how it makes me happy. So would I take a gig for 10 grand, or would I go to my daughter's birthday? That's very true. 10 grand's not going to make me happy. Go to my daughter's birthday. Missing it's going to make me unhappy. Correct. That's it. And I think so many people get that confused in the sense of what does really drive them. And you've obviously understood that for you. What are the most important factors for you? Because you've experienced success multiple times now. You've experienced it in the corporate sense. You've then experienced it with comedy, and then you've fallen down again, and you've come back up again. But you've realised that the most important thing at the end of it, of course, is family. The time with your family, the time that you have because of obviously what's happened to your parents, which I think is really powerful. What would you say some of the biggest lessons that comedy's taught you? We went through a lot today, but what's one that kind of stands out to you in the sense that your time in comedy's taught you about life? I think comedy has taught me to look at failure differently from a different angle. Because, I mean, it's such a cliche, innit, that everybody's scared of failing. But you need to fail in order to improve, and I think comedy shows that. I mean, of course it's bad when you go up and try a new joke and it dies in their arse, but realistically, the audience, they don't have a clue. They just think you're talking, and they just think you're talking. They're not sitting there thinking, oh, that one never worked. Aye. They don't know. So it's getting over that mentality, and comedy has absolutely told me, and I think comedy's gave me that. It's made it easier to fail, yes, and then move on, and I think comedy's also taught me in uncertain times how much people actually appreciate just having a laugh. People's attention spans, see, since I started 15 years ago,
people's attention spans are. Comedy must be one of the only, what would I say, times that somebody actually sits. Because if you're watching the telly or whatever, you're scrolling, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
But live entertainment is the only time you've actually got the person's complete focus. And it's different for a musical because you're watching a musical. With comedy, you're just watching me.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to sit and watch me for 20 minutes, a break, and then an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you've got people in the palm of your hand for an hour telling your life story.
Yeah.
And it's no easy to talk about your mum and dad passing away on stage. But most importantly, it's no easy to make it funny. And I don't know where this phrase comes from. A comedian just says funny things, right? A comedian just says funny things, whereas an artist makes things funny. So I take my life as an artist and I make it funny instead of just saying, oh, my mum came the other day when she's dead.
Aye, that's.
So I think that's the important thing for me. And that's where my comedy shifted, where when I first started, I was maybe doing one-liners and stuff like that. Whereas now, the next tour show, so this tour show, Tips Not Included, is all about until it's sort of next week it concludes. It's my life story basically, and I say it's a guy behind the clips.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen a clip, this is a guy behind the clips. And then the next one is going to be called Life Support. And what that is it's my 15 years of working in end of life care and the lessons I've learned for people that are end of life and the regrets that they've had. And I want to pass that on to the audiences to say, look, this could be you. Do you want to be sitting there with regrets, or are you going to go out in life? And it's sort of life support as if you're on life support.
Yeah.
But I feel as if sometimes we're on life support because we're driven by other things and we're stuck in jobs we hate.
Yeah. Which I think is, again, so unique about when I heard about what you do and when I started seeing kind of behind the curtain almost and all this, like your ability to give people life lessons through comedy. I'd never experienced that before. I'd never seen that in anybody else. And then when you talk about your story, it's really powerful what you do, man. Like I remember you've shared comments with me before when people have messaged you some incredible and some not so incredible things before, but how does it feel to like truly have an impact in people's lives? Like you again, I don't know if you can remember any of the top of your head, but when people message you and say, that was incredible, you know, I felt so good, like just being able to come to your show and switch off and all the lessons you went over for So True. What does that feel like, that impact you can have through comedy?
Yeah, I think it's really warming. You get a lot of messages asking for videos for people end of life and to visit people end of life as well. And I think to be able to do that, and to be able to give someone, what would I say, that humour, or just to give them that personal touch when they're sitting in a ward and they message you and say, I'm getting through watching your videos, and you think, God. And at the end of the day, I film these and put these out, and you forget that 10 million people are watching them. And there's going to be some people out of that 10 million that are terminally ill or end of life. And there's been a few clips recently where there was actually a woman who was terminally ill in the audience. And to me, to respect her, I don't treat that woman any different. She's getting an arse ripping if she's got grade 4 cancer or not. Do you know? And she appreciates that.
Yeah.
And the same with the woman who was blind, or the woman who had dementia, or the guy who had dementia. If you come and see me, you're equal. You're all part of this. And they appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it would be disrespectful and wrong for me to not do that.
To treat them any differently.
Aye.
Absolutely. You're giving people, I suppose, what they want to feel normal to feel to feel this. That's really, really powerful. Can you think of any times, I mean, these are huge, anything that's happened in the past when somebody's came to your show and they've been like, wow, like something you've not expected before that they've messaged you? Is anything?
Yeah, so someone quit their job. They were in banking as well, and it was a different show. So it was a different show I did at the Fringe. It was called Gordon Ramsay's Karma Cafe.
Oh, aye.
And it was all about, I spent £649.69 at Gordon Ramsay's, and it was karma for me ripping off people at the bank. I really actually enjoyed that show. Totally different for the one I'm doing, but he messaged me after and he says, I'm in banking and I've quit.
Wow.
I've quit my job. And that was cool. I mean, I don't know what he went on to do, but that was really impactful in terms of people were then going off and making decisions. And the messages for this show is just incredible in terms of like did Aberdeen last weekend, and I was getting so many messages saying, look, just lost my mum or lost my dad, and I just wanted to say you don't know how it's affected in terms of the comedy, and it's great, but I'm really proud of the show because it is my sort of heartwarming story in terms of, look, and I say to folk, this happened to me. If you're sitting there depressed, you come to my show and you think to yourself, do you know what, I'm doing brilliant. And we just have to laugh at these things, and yeah, that's, I think, and it's amazing that it's been recorded and catalogued now, so that, and I don't mean to seem morbid, and my wife keeps saying, stop saying that, but when I'm not here, the thought that somebody would still be available to watch would be great.
Very cool. It sure is. And you alluded it to there, obviously that's into the future. What does the future look like for you? Obviously you've got the biggest shows of your life next week. You've got plans to be at the Hydro within the next year or two. What does the future look like for you?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say stepping back, but I'm doing less gigs in bigger venues. And I think that's going to really scope out my time to spend with family and my daughter. And my dad was amazing and he gave us everything, but maybe it was a shame that he worked so much, you know, when we were younger, and we went holidays and things, but I want to be there more consistent for my daughter and my wife as well. So I think running the comedy club, as I say, there's already scope. We're going to be bringing in guests, so I get a weekend off a month, and then just not touring in as many venues, but larger venues, and then that's going to cut down the time. But also I've got involved in charity work as well. I think that's really important. It's something that's really important to me as well. So I think, yeah, it's doing less gigs in bigger venues to open up my time more to be a dad and a husband and the rest.
And you also, again, for what we spoke about, you're using comedy too, or you will use it and you'll continue to use it to give back and do the things you want to do, which I think is a really great thing, because people think of, you know, success is like, or whatever, or even happiness, I'll be happy when I get this or that, but the true happiness, which I think you've experienced multiple times now, doesn't come from attaining one set thing. It's from what you can give to others, which now you're in a position to do, you already do, but you said that's a big part of what you want to do.
Absolutely, and I think it's through the shows, I want my shows to be different for the clips. So what I mean by that is, the clips are audience interaction, and you get a bit of a flavour for what I'm like as a person and my sense of humour. And people will say, you'll get the odd, of course you do, you always, the odd comment, is that all he does? Is there no material? And I'm like, you buy a ticket for the material. But, and I think I want people to come to the show, and I don't mean, I hate when they say, oh, we've got a takeaway for the show, but I want people to come to the show and think, do you know what? He's right. Why am I fucking sitting? All right, I might be earning 100 grand a year, but I'm not seeing anybody and I'm miserable. I'd be better going and trying to start my own business or taking the risk, and it's not always been plain sailing for me, and I have took risks, and I've almost, I mean, wasn't bankrupt, but I was debt arrangement. I couldn't get credit for 7 years until that was wiped. So I've been through the bumps and come through the other end. And I think if individuals are sitting there thinking, oh, I'll do it tomorrow or next week, nah, just do it now. And it's only you. People forget it's you. It's nobody else. You can make it happen. Nobody else. It's you that's got to make a decision. And they'll find excuses, and there's no excuses. It's you. Just do it. Yeah.
It's excellent. I think you're the perfect example of that. I mean, you think of all the things you've listed that you've went through. Like I put myself in the situation when you were telling me about your mum and the kind of glimpse that you got as a child, and then obviously like your experience through school, and when your 20s feeling depressed and feeling like you had everything and you had nothing. Like I'm putting myself in these situations, then of course with your dad, and then with Morgan and almost losing her. Like I'm putting myself in these situations and thinking, I don't know what I would have done. And if you can come out the other end of it and build the life that you've built now, it just shows you that like people can do this. And as you said, it all comes down to you. Everybody looks for, oh, I need this, or I need to be handed this. But the reality is we can choose how we respond to these things, these inevitable hardships of life. And you're a great example of that. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing your story, man. It was great to go through absolutely all this. And obviously, as we said, you've got the biggest shows of your life next week, and you've come through all of this, going from nobody turning up your shows to having 3,000 at one show. It's inspiring, mate. It really is. So yeah, I appreciate you coming on today, mate.
Not
I
at
really
all.
do.
Super. Is there a fee for this?
You bastard.